Has there been any talk about increasing the amount of those benefits?
If you've applied for disability, don't give up if you get denied.
The mental health issues have probably skyrocketed. We got a special podcast today. We have a very special guest. He's not only the top Social Security disability attorney in the area, he's also a very close friend of mine from law school. I'd like to welcome Tom Giordano from Pond Lehocky Giordano. Tom is an expert in the field of Social Security disability, and that's where we refer all of our cases with respect to disability. And they also have the largest workers' compensation firm practice also in the area, in the region for sure. Tom, welcome to the show.
Lawrence, Eric, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's not very often that we get like actual celebrities in our studio. I mean, you are a celebrity.
I'm looking around. Where? Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks,
No,
man. I don't
it's you.
think so.
Tom, let's talk a little bit about Social Security disability. Can you just give us a brief explanation of what that is? Because everybody hears the term, and actually talk a little bit about your firm as well. Everybody hears the term Social Security disability, SSI, but I don't think they really understand what it means. Can you just give us a little brief synopsis?
Yeah, I can do, Lawrence. So I think people, and you're right, I think people mix the terms up. They'll say SSI, I want SSI, or I want disability. So there's the Social Security disability program, and underneath it, there's two parts of it. There's SSDI, Social Security disability insurance, and there's SSI. And the easiest way to talk about these two programs is the eligibility. So how are you eligible for SSDI? Well, probably the easiest way to say it is if you've worked and you've paid taxes at least 5 out of the last 10 years, you're eligible for SSDI because you've paid into the system. I don't know if you've looked at one of your paychecks recently, but if you look at that FICA tax, that always comes out at 6.2%. Where's that 6.2% going? That's going right to the Social Security Administration into a fund so that when you retire or if you're disabled, you can apply and you can get those benefits. SSI, completely different. It is for people who have never paid into the system or haven't paid into the system in a very long time, or for children who didn't even have an opportunity to pay into the system. So we'll talk about disability and what it means to be medically disabled. That's the same under both programs, but the eligibility for each one depends upon work or not work.
First of all, you said something interesting. This program is available to both adults and children?
Correct.
Okay. And when should someone consider applying for these types of benefits?
What I find in our practice is people, A, don't even know it exists, and B, when they think about it, that months have passed. So what I would suggest to anybody out there who's currently working, whether you're in physical pain, mental pain, whether you have a disease that might be progressing and getting worse, you should start thinking about it before you even go out of work. Now, you can't apply for it until you've stopped working, until the medical conditions have stopped you from doing the job that you were performing. But you can start thinking about it and planning for it if you're dealing with physical or mental issues or both while you're working.
I literally, almost to a T, at least once a week, I get a phone call. And a lot of people are confused about the government program that gives you the SSI and SSD versus private disability. How do you distinguish it? Can you get both?
Let's just talk about private disability for a second. In my practice, and I'm sure you've probably ran into this as well, there's not a lot of people who have actually paid for private disability policies. They call it long-term disability. You can go out and get a long-term disability or a short-term disability policy. And that's like any other insurance where you're paying a premium every month. And if you need it, it's there, but you may never use it and you may just be paying premiums the rest of your life. Social Security disability, that's there for everybody, whether you've worked or not worked, and it doesn't matter. There's nothing you're buying. I mean, you're buying it because you're paying it if you're working, but it's not a private policy. It's there for you. So what I would suggest is if somebody has a private policy and is unable to work, well, then they might be able to collect, well, they will be able to collect on that private policy and Social Security. But for the 90% of Americans out there that don't have private policies, focus on Social Security disability insurance or SSI.
I was not aware that you don't have to be an adult to be eligible for benefits under the Social Security disability or for SSI or SSD.
Correct.
Under what circumstances would somebody who is not an adult, like a child, be entitled to those benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I can just give you a few examples right off the bat, from the most serious to something the more common. The most serious is if you're a child and you're born with a birth defect of cerebral palsy, God forbid, some kind of cancer, something along those lines, and you know that is going to impact your child's development moving forward, apply for SSI. Now, where SSI with children becomes a little tricky is it's based upon the parent's assets and resources. So if you're a parent of a child who's disabled and you and your spouse are working, you may have some money in the bank, you may not be eligible, your child may not be eligible for SSI. But for most Americans who are, paycheck to paycheck, who don't have the money in the bank, or et cetera, if your child is born with a birth defect, apply for SSI. The more common thing that we've been seeing over the last 20 years is severe ADHD, autism, behavioral issues, mental health issues with children. If your child has that, if their ADHD or their autism is making it difficult for them to progress in school, apply for SSI. So
that's a great example. That's a great
and
example.
I'm sure post-COVID, the mental health issues have probably skyrocketed.
We've seen a lot more of it. And what I would say as a practical tip for the people who are listening out there, the most important thing you can do for your child is to make sure they are seeing the behavioral health therapist. If you have access to doctors, make sure they're seeing doctors. If you have IEPs, I believe that's what they're called, IEPs from schools, make sure you have that documenting that your children have problems, because if you have that evidence, it makes it easier for you to win. It's not easy to win by any means, but the more medical evidence or school evidence that you have of a disability impacting a child, the better it is for you.
And a lot of these programs for behavioral health, for mental health issues, they're covered under Medicaid, right?
Correct. If anybody is on Medicaid, then you've essentially met the eligibility requirements for SSI. You've met the financial eligibility. If you can qualify for Medicaid, you likely can qualify for SSI, assuming you have medical conditions that are disabling.
If I do qualify, how much are my benefits going to be? How are they calculated? What's the maximum? What's the minimum? How does that happen?
Again, I'm going to have to separate that question into SSDI versus SSI. SSDI, meaning the money that you've paid into the system through working throughout the years, you can never tell somebody exactly what they're going to get. What you would tell them is go on ssa.gov, the Social Security website, go under the My Social Security tab, and you can actually download your earnings statement, which will tell you exactly what you're eligible for every month. It's pretty simple to do it that way. They used to mail these things out to us many years ago, but the government realized that mailing out millions of these documents cost them a lot of money. So now it's all online. So that's that. For SSI, it's specifically based upon whether you're a disabled individual. There's a maximum, and then there's a reduction for every, whether you're getting food stamps, whether you're getting any kind of income, there's reductions. But SSI, certainly there's a cap. It's typically around $800 a month. But for SSDI, depending on how much you paid in, you can get as high as $3,000 a month, or as low as a few $100s.
You said the parameters of the monthly payment. So if I understood you correctly, it's between $800 and $3,000.
Actually, it could be less than 800, Lawrence. The max is roughly 3,000, 3,200. Those are for people who've worked throughout the, many years, maybe higher paying jobs. I'll tell you what the national average for SSDI checks are. It's $1,100 a month. Okay. So their 3,000 is the top. 1,100 is kind of where most Americans who've worked, that's what they get. It could be lower than that.
So do the people who are awarded these benefits, do they get back pay for the time lost?
Absolutely. And in fact, that's how we get paid. One of the things that I like about the work that you do in personal injury and motor vehicle, and the work that I do, is we're contingent, right? We don't get paid unless our client gets paid, unless our client wins. Because, think about it this way. If you're out of work and you're in pain and you have medical conditions and bills are piling up, the last thing you can do is afford an attorney if that attorney was charging you by the hour, right? So we don't do that. You don't do that. What happens is if you hire us to help you with your disability case and you win, it does take a while to win. So what do I mean by that? It could take anywhere from 6 months to almost 2 years to be awarded disability. You'll get retroactively paid for that time. Our fee comes right out of that back money. It doesn't even come out of it doesn't really, never even goes in your pocket. The government will cut me a 25% fee, one time only. The max is $7,200, so I can't make more than that on a case. The client will get the rest, and then every month after that, for as long as they're on disability, they get 100% of their benefits.
So you don't charge anything for this work?
No. And in fact, if you lose, and that happens from time to time, and let's say we spend 2 years on your case and we don't win for you, you don't owe us a penny.
Right.
And that goes for any disability attorney, not just us. That's how we all get paid.
And that's the same with our injury practice. We don't get paid unless we win, essentially. Right. So really, a client who thinks they're eligible for benefits has nothing to lose when they go and talk to you, right?
Nothing. In fact, I will tell people, even if you're not even sure you're eligible, call me, we'll talk, I'll give you your right. And then maybe you're eligible in 6 months. Maybe it's a year from now. Who cares? But at least we've talked about it. And of course, it costs nothing.
You would be surprised about how many people have a difficult time grasping that concept that they don't have to pay to speak to an attorney to find out if they have the right to collect anything.
It's the most important thing we put in our advertisements, free consultation, because we don't want people to think that it costs any money to talk to us.
Could you walk us through, Tom, for instance, how does this process work from intake? Somebody comes into your office. Give us an example of an average case where somebody comes in and they're not sure whether or not they qualify.
We're typically getting called when somebody has stopped working because of a medical condition. And I think it's so important to let the audience know that it could be any medical condition whatsoever. As long as that medical condition is making it difficult for you to consistently work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on a consistent basis. I mean, we're talking about, it could be headaches, Lawrence. It could be diabetes, heart condition. It can be, a major pain in your lower back, your neck, elbows, anything. I mean, really any medical condition whatsoever. If you're out of work, call us. Usually they do. And we'll ask them some questions. The first question, are you working? And if the answer is yes, we're going to ask how much they're earning, and they may not be eligible to apply at that time. So we'll give them some information. But the people who are out of work, we'll find out about their medical conditions. We'll find out when the last time they worked. We'll ask them some questions about their work history to see if they're eligible for disability insurance versus SSI. And then we'll talk about their doctors and their medical treatment, and then we'll file for them. The one thing I will say is that there's multiple ways you can apply for disability. That's the first step, is applying for it. You can apply on your own. You can walk down to a Social Security local office in your neighborhood and apply there, or you could have an attorney do it. Clearly, I'm biased, right? But I think it is easier if an attorney handles the case from the start, does the application correct, and then helps you along the way. But people come to us whether they've applied and were denied, or they're thinking of applying, doesn't matter, but that's typically how it starts.
What's an average time frame for a case from beginning to end?
What's so interesting about my world, the Social Security disability world, is COVID actually made the Social Security Administration more efficient. It doesn't make sense, but the wait times have gone down. So typically, once you apply, you have to wait, I'd say on average, 6 months to get an answer. And typically, 70% of the time, that answer is no. They deny you, okay? So 7 out of 10 applications typically get denied. Here's my public service announcement. Never accept the denial. Always file an appeal. The next step is something called a reconsideration. They will reconsider the application. That takes about another 3 to 6 months. So now you're looking at potentially about 9 to 12 months for the first 2 stages. If you get denied again, you then can go in front of a judge. Now, going in front of a judge, the good news is that's where your best chance of success lies. In the past, it also was where your longest wait would lie. But something happened during the pandemic, and I think part of it has to do with the video conferencing that we're doing here today. Judges allowing this to happen for court. Now the wait for a hearing went from almost 2 years to down to about 6 to 9 months. So all in, Lawrence and Eric, you're probably anywhere from 6 months to 2.5 years. It's a long time. But guess what? That's a pretty good improvement from what it used to be. I mean, I had clients prior to the pandemic waiting just 2 years for a hearing.
What is it that being in front of the judge gives you the best opportunity to get your benefits?
I think it's probably twofold. And one is something that we all learned in evidence class, back in law school, and that is human nature. A judge seeing your client, a judge feeling that emotion, and see it and hear it and judge someone's credibility is extremely important. I think that's one. But I think you have to remember judges are very well trained, as opposed to some of the people making decisions in the first two levels of the Social Security process. I can't vouch for those people. I don't know if they've had a day of training or 10 years of training. I don't know if they've ever heard of some of the medical conditions that my clients or your clients have. So we see denials at higher levels because they don't necessarily understand the medical like a judge does. So I think it's being seen. It's actually because what the first two levels of Social Security's application process, the client is just a piece of paper. They just read records. The judge then has the opportunity to see the client and understand the records. I think that's why you see more success, Eric, in front of the judge.
You just said something. It correlates to our practice where when our clients are done treating, we send out demand packages and it's just medical records. It's only paper. So the insurance company doesn't get a chance to evaluate the actual person. They don't know the person and they just put a stamp number on it, which is always usually a lowball number. It's not the real value of this case. We are immediately forced to file suit. And then after a deposition, the tune changes because they actually got to, like you just said, look and see the person, see how the person's going to testify, come across in court. And that's very important for us too, when we prepare our clients for these events, because obviously they're good people, but they're nervous. They don't know how to react in these situations.
Exactly.
So that's where our practices are parallel. And that's why you need an attorney, especially in both practices, to prepare them for these events.
If you can think of three things that you want somebody to take away from everything that we talked about, or something that they should know about these types of benefits they can get, what would those three things be?
If you've applied for disability, don't give up if you get denied. That's maybe the number one mistake people make when they start this process, whether it's with an attorney or not. And a lot of people start without an attorney. It's they get denied and they think that that's it. And they think that they have no chance. Not true. Keep going. For an individual who has never even heard of the system, I would want them to know that any medical condition that is keeping them from work could be considered disabling. Okay, that doesn't, I think there's a misconception out there that you have to be in a wheelchair or you have to be bedbound to be eligible for a Social Security disability. Absolutely not. I've gotten clients disability benefits for things that you wouldn't have expected to get it, but it keeps them from working, right? If you have severe carpal tunnel in your hands, it's going to be very difficult for you to do a job that involves you continually using your hands, okay? You're certainly not in bed and bedbound, you're not in a wheelchair, but you're unable to work because you can't physically use your hands on a consistent basis. So, that's important. And then number three, and this is more important than hiring an attorney, at least in my opinion, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's continue to get medical treatment for your conditions. If we don't have doctor reports showing the severity of the conditions, we have nothing. People sometimes have a hard time finding doctors, which I completely understand, especially in rural towns. I think there's always insurance issues. But if you have access to healthcare, take advantage of it.
I've heard somebody said a long time ago is the phrase is feed the baby. And I've literally had the same conversation with a client earlier today, which is I said, look, your case, it's like a little baby. What do you have to do with let the baby grow? You got to feed it. You got to feed it milk. The consistency with which you go to the doctor and with which you follow the course of treatment the doctor prescribes, you have to feed the baby. That's what it is. You have to document what's going on. You have to document what you're doing to get it right. And that's what gives you the maximum recovery. If
you tell me that your back is in constant pain and it makes it difficult for you to walk, sitting is difficult for long periods of time, your leg gives out on you, I believe you. But if you're not seeing a doctor and telling that doctor these same things, and that doctor's not putting it in the record, the judge, at least in my world, it doesn't exist. And not only just treating for it, being vocal in the doctor's office about the issues you have. I think a lot of our clients will go back to the doctor and say, I'm the same. I'm the same. You know, it's not getting any better. It's not getting any worse. I'm the same. Well, okay, tell me what that means. I'm the same, meaning I have the same electrical pain that's shooting down my leg. I want to hear that. I want that to be in the record. We need the records to describe the pain as much as possible, because what that does is it corroborates our client's testimony. And that's really important.
If somebody has a Social Security case, like for instance, in our practice, we file cases either in Philadelphia County, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, depending on where the incident occurred or other factors. How about you? Where do your cases get filed?
So it's the state on which the client is a resident, right? So Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. The one great thing about Social Security disability work, and Lawrence, you've heard me say this for years, is I can help people in all 50 states. I don't have to be barred in all 50 states. If you're a Pennsylvania resident, I'm going to file your application online. That's the first thing. I'm going to do that for everybody. Your case is going to be assigned to an adjudicator in Pennsylvania, in the disability determination services in Pennsylvania or in New Jersey, wherever you live. And then if you have to go in front of a judge, it'll most likely be a judge who is in your state. But again, with this technology that we have now, a judge who might not be as busy, let's say in Ohio, could hear a case in Pennsylvania or New Jersey.
I mean, you've been very modest here today, but you'd probably say you're the biggest Social Security disability lawyer in the East Coast, at least. I'm not going to say the country, because I know I don't want you to blush, but you would agree with that statement, right?
There's some big firms out there. I will tell you this, Lawrence, something I'm most proud of, I'm okay to brag about this, is we've helped in the last 10 years, we've secured about 60,000 Social Security awards. So we've helped 60,000 people over a 10-year period win their case.
With that, we're going to drink, and we are going to drink. Tommy's going to drink. What is your drink? There you go. Okay.
I wish you many more success. You said 60,000 cases to another 60,000 in the near future. Congratulations.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Pleasure.
All right,
Good
go
lawyers
Birds.
and good friends.